Kaylin, can you say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Well, Kaylin, thank you so much for being with us today. Can you please give us a self-introduction?
Absolutely. So, as you can see here, I am the Vice President of Global Talent Management at Monster and Ronstadt Enterprise. And I have the best job in the world. I get to actually help people be their best. And my focus has been on a lot of different things from onboarding to employee engagement to diversity and inclusion, and obviously development. And what we're going to talk about today is, in fact, that career development and personal development and how you can really own it yourself. So, with that, Ginger, I should go ahead and share my slides, right?
Yes, please do.
All right, there are lots of buttons here. There's the one. Okay, there.
And yep, that looks great. Take it away.
Perfect. Okay. So, owning your career. I know this topic sounds like it should just be obvious, right? If you have a career, you own it. But what we find a lot of times is that we don't realize how much control we have. And so, what we're going to talk about today, if it'll let me change the slide, there we go, are some of the things that you can think about when it comes to your career. So we'll go through what's changing in the future of careers, because believe it or not, it is different than it used to be. From there, we'll talk about some things like the principles of owning your career, what that really means and looks like, how you do that, how you can grow. My favorite topic, how do you gain experience? Because we all know that in order to get the job, you have to have experience, but you can't get experience without having the job. Not exactly true, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then at the end, we're going to talk about how you have the conversation with your manager, because that's often the biggest thing and something that, when done right, is so easy. And if you're not used to it, is so scary at first. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. It's a lot to cover in about 20-15 minutes. So I'm going to dive right in. But if you have questions, just throw them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So, the future of careers. Well, what's happening now is we're seeing that work is changing. We've seen organizations, as you can see here on the slide, they're getting much flatter, and things are changing so quickly that everybody is focused on being as agile as possible and really putting people at capacity as much as possible, right? There's no downtime anymore with careers. And so what we're seeing is careers go from being focused on what you've done before to what skills you can bring, right? Everything is becoming much more skills focused. And with that becomes this idea that you can be a bit more fluid in what you're doing. Because it's not so much that you did this and now you have to go to the next rung on the ladder, but rather you have this skill set and this job over there needs it at the moment. So let's go there for now. And then we can come back here and we can kind of move around a little bit more based on the skills that we have and that we acquire as we grow. The other thing to think about here, and I'm actually going to skip to this last bullet point here, is what employees expect today. Now, we're here talking about this, and it seems like, if I'm talking to you about owning your career, you may not feel that this idea of having that personalization is something that you really deserve, right? This idea that it's your career, that companies should personalize it to you. But what I want to tell you is, as work changes, as the new generation comes along, and I know every generation is the new generation, but this generation has grown up with the idea that everything should be on demand, right? The best example I can give you of this is my kids and I are watching Full House right now. And every time we go to the theme song, I start to sing it, which hurts their ears. And they say, "Mom, why do you know that?" And I have to explain to them that we grew up in an era where you couldn't just hit skip intro. You actually had to listen to the song. And this concept of personalization, of on-demand everything, of getting what you want when you want it, is changing the way that we have careers. So keep that in mind as we go through the rest of what we're talking about here. The principles that I have up on this slide are based on what we're doing at both Monster and Ronstadt, which are, Ronstadt is the parent company of Monster.com. So my role is within both of those worlds, and these are the principles that we have within both of those worlds. The first one, as obvious as it may seem, is you own your career, right? We can't sit back and expect that someone else is going to give us our next role. We have to be clear about what we want, and we have to go out and get it. And sometimes what we have to think about is the fact that because we want to be here, where we go next from here might be over here, might be down here. It's not just necessarily going to be the ladder that we always used to think about, right? Multi-directional career growth can be incredibly helpful. And I'll tell you, I've done that myself at times, and it really has been exceptionally useful for my career. This third bullet point might be my favorite. And this is the idea that it's actually from the Center for Leadership Studies. There's a program called Situational Leadership. And the idea is that until you've actually practiced something, you don't actually have the ability. You can study everything you want, take as many Udemy courses or LinkedIn learning courses, but until you've actually sat down and done it and tried it and maybe even failed, as the next bullet point shows, you don't have the ability to do it. So one of the things with your career growth that you want to think about is, how do we get that experience? And again, we'll talk about that in a little while. And yeah, you own your career, but you're not alone. Anyone who has gotten anywhere has had a network of people to help them. And these are people that the more that they understand what you want, the more they'll be able to help you, right? Think about it. If you have kids, when they're little and they don't have the language to describe what they want, think about the frustration because you don't know how to help them. When they get older and they say, I'm hungry, it's a lot easier to then say, okay, here's some food, right? Once you know how you can best help someone, it's much easier to do that. So think about your network and how you can make sure that they're there to help you. And then lastly, when we talk about skills, there's always this idea that you have your strengths and your development areas, right? And we all have this concept that I need to focus on making sure my development areas are right what they need to be and strengthen those. Well, sure, but lean into your strengths. Lean into what you do best, because there's a reason you do it best. And usually that reason is because it's something you enjoy. And the more that you lean into the things that you enjoy, the better you're going to get at them. And that will bring your career where you want it to go. So I just want you to think about that. At Monster and Ronstadt, we've actually rolled out this concept for owning your career. And I wanted to bring it to you today because often when we think about career growth, we think, oh, time for me to get a promotion, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. So with career growth, it could just mean something as simple as being the very, very best at what you do and excelling in your current role. And sometimes that means learning a different skill that you can use in your role. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that I'm responsible for is performance management. And we didn't have a great performance management system, but we also hadn't budgeted for it for the year. So I went out and looked at all the blogs and did some learning, and I figured out how to build one on a Microsoft app, right? Has absolutely nothing to do with HR. It's an IT thing, but it was something that was going to help me excel in my current role. And it really actually has helped, and it's helped the organization as well. So that's a chance that I had to grow, to own my career, to move it forward without changing jobs, without moving away from what I liked, but rather leaning into what was necessary. The second piece of growth is, we often think again, okay, so if I want to be more visible in the organization, or if I want to have more of an impact, I have to have a different role. No, you don't. You can be a leader in the organization, no matter what you do. And one of the things that you can do is figure out how to expand your impact and influence, how to have your voice be heard more, and how to have your voice be powerful for everyone involved. So with that, we have some tools and resources. And again, this is where gaining experience and managing your brand really would come in handy. And then, of course, there's exploring new opportunities, which is where you're actually going to take your career to whatever next step you want to take. So that's how we break it down. And, this goes back to what I was just saying a second ago about the idea that when we do actually look for that next opportunity, we're not looking at the ladder. The more that we can get away from that concept of the ladder, the better. And this goes back again to that idea that we're focused on skills. Maybe in order to get here, I need a skill that I build here, and a skill that I build here, and a skill that I build here. I was talking with somebody recently who just got a promotion, and she said she's in talent acquisition. She said, yeah, my new boss says that after about a year, he's going to make everybody on his team change roles. So I'm going to have to do something else. I've never done that before. I asked her how she felt about that, and she lit up, and she said, well, how else am I going to learn to grow, right? So taking these scary chances and going somewhere and doing something different is how you learn to grow. It doesn't necessarily have to be up. It could even be down or across, and you're going to get where you want to go. And you can see here, it could be enrichment. It could be realigning. It could be doing something completely different that you've never done before. All of that is that multi-directional career growth. What you see on this slide comes from Squiggly Careers. And if you don't know Squiggly Careers, go find it. It is the coolest set of podcasts, and there's a book, and there's a TED Talk, and all that stuff by two women in Britain. So it even sounds nice when you listen to it. But they're all about this concept of the squiggly career, right? That careers are not a straight ladder. And I just wanted to throw these on here for a second so that you could kind of marinate in this fact that people progress at their own pace, that there is no one perfect example of a successful career, right? I look at myself, and my career is completely different than my husband's, and we're both successful in our own ways. So having that concept of what is important to you is what's going to help you own your career. Now, we talked about this before about how knowledge plus experience equals skill. And I just wanted to reiterate that because this is so important. And this is something you can do yourself, right? So what we've talked about so far is the fact that, yeah, skills are important. And we've talked about the fact that your career may take you in different directions. And with that, when we're talking about all of that, you do need other people. You need people to tell you, okay, this job opening is here, or you need people who can walk you through what they think your skills are and things like that, right? That's stuff you need other people for. Getting the experience, you don't. Getting the knowledge, you don't. There are so many resources out there, even free resources, that can give you the skills knowledge you need. And then getting the experience is actually something you can do without ever talking to your boss. And I know you think that's silly, but let me tell you why. So when we look at this, what we're looking at is the practical knowledge and skills acquired through action, right? So we need to take action somehow. And there are a bunch of different ways that do not require your manager looking at you and saying, you can take this action now, because they don't have time to think about it. I read something on LinkedIn this morning that the people at the top of their craft, right? So think of Adele, think of Tom Brady. They have all of these people around them whose job it is to make them even better, right? Adele has a singing coach. Tom Brady had all sorts of people around him to make him his very best, even when he was already the very best. Managers are sort of supposed to be that person for their employee. But what I read this morning was that they spend about 20 to 30 minutes a month per employee, right? That's all the time managers have these days. Because again, we talked about organizations are flatter, everything is changing a mile a minute, everything's more agile. So we can't rely on our manager to think to themselves, oh, you know what? Kaelyn wants experience. Let me think about what exactly I can do while I'm doing these other 95 things to get her experience. We have to speak up. We have to actually raise our hands and say, this is what I want to do. And say it to our manager, but say it to everybody around us as well. Because I guarantee you, when you start doing that, you're going to find people taking you up on that. A friend of mine just pinged me and said, hey, I am going for an interview and I need your help writing up a 30, 60, 90 plan. I'm not in her career, but she knows that I love coaching people. And so by making my passions known, I get more opportunities to practice my experiences. The second way that you can actually gain experience is to look at what you're doing right now and just do it differently, right? Take what you've learned from whatever skilling platform you learned it and just look at, this is my job. How can I change it today? So if you want to learn to be more of give more presentations, maybe you start videotaping your weekly update instead of sending an email, right? Little things like that are just changes to what you're currently doing will give you the opportunity to practice. And sometimes it's really just thinking outside of that proverbial box, right? It's thinking about things in a different way so that you can change your processes to get the experience. I am a big believer in company groups, right? So we have business resource groups, and these groups are, affinity groups based on something that's of interest to the people involved, but there's so many opportunities within each of them to learn and grow. Again, if presentation skills are the thing you're trying to work on, well, you go to BRG and you say, hey, I'm trying to work on this. Once a quarter, can I be in charge of doing a presentation for this BRG, right? Whatever it is you need to work on, I guarantee you there's an opportunity to practice it within a BRG. And that experience is what's going to help you get where you want to go. Simple thing. And we said this just a few minutes ago, right? Don't just talk to your boss about what you need. When you raise your hand, talk to everybody. And sometimes you might even say to your network, hey, you know what? I'm looking to gain presentation skills. Do you know any places I could go do that? Or do you have anybody I should talk to, right? Because they may know somebody who's an exceptional presenter and they may put you in touch with them. And that person might have opportunities. So it's all about just talking about what you like. And the last one, this is so important. Volunteer. It doesn't matter what you do, but opportunities to volunteer make you better at whatever it is you're looking to do. I'll give you an example from my own life. I'm on the board of a really awesome organization called Project Chimps. It's a sanctuary for chimpanzees. So yay. I'm on the board because I'm in HR, right? I don't really do the hard stuff in HR. I always get to do the easy stuff like make people's jobs better. But they don't know that. And so they keep coming to me and asking me to help them write job descriptions, which I've never done before, and asking me to help them with their hiring processes, which I've never done before. And so I'm building up this huge network of skills that I never had before by volunteering and helping this other organization. So I highly encourage you to do that as well. I'm going to pause there for a second and touch on one thing that I hear a lot, which is, hey, if I'm raising my hand and I'm talking to my network and I'm doing all of this and I'm putting myself out there, aren't I just bragging? And I want you to think for a second about the fact that you're not. That instead what you're doing is sharing what interests you. And this is just what communication is. This is what talking to people is all about, is sharing those interests. So as long as you don't walk into the room and go, excuse me, I now know how to do Excel. So you need to listen to me when I do Excel and you need to give me all of your Excel. If you do that, no one's going to want to give you Excel projects. They probably still will, because who wants to do things in Excel? But if you go in and you say, hey, I'm so excited. I have this new thing that I learned how to do. Does anybody else want to learn it? Or does anybody else want me to take on this task because I'm trying to practice it? People will come to you in droves, right? You will get every expense report or Excel report that you're ever going to need to do, because people want to interact with people who are passionate about what they do. So as long as you're owning that passion, then you can talk about it all you want. You just can't go out and tell people about it in a way that makes it sound like you're not being authentic. If you're being who you really are, people are going to want to hear it. And that leads us to the last part of this, which is the idea that conversations are how you own your career, right? And only 16% of people have ongoing conversations about their career. I can't remember where this is from. I want to say Harvard. And 82% of people would be more engaged in their work with regular career conversations. So it's really, really important that you're having regular conversations with your boss and, again, your network about what you want to do. about where your skills are. And don't talk about necessarily, hey, I have this plan to be here at this point, but keep your mind open to everything that you could possibly do, because it's going to make it so much easier to get where you think you want to go if you're open to all of the places you could go, right? Because every time you take a step, you have a new perspective. And when you look around, you might say, you know what? I came into this role because I liked these things, and I'm here, and maybe I don't need to go here to continue doing these things, because now I also like this thing and I can get this over here. So keeping those possibilities open is what really is going to help you grow further. And again, we talked about this, but the idea of helping your manager help you. Be clear in what interests you. Be clear in what doesn't interest you. Ask for their help, but help them understand what you need them to do. Ask them for their network. That's a big thing that people don't think about, but managers have a network that's different than ours, right? Because they're a different person. Everybody has a network. So talk to people and talk to your manager and ask for the things that are going to help you, and they will help you. I ask for feedback far more than people want to give me feedback. And I encourage you to do the same. Ask for feedback on your work, ask for feedback on your presentation, ask for feedback on your personality. I mean, maybe not, because I've asked for feedback sometimes and it's not always good, but ask for feedback. And with that, have conversations. Just go talk to people. It is such an interesting concept, but now that we have some people back in offices, we're seeing that the newer generation who were interns during the pandemic, when they go into the office, they have no idea what to do. They don't know how to make small talk. They don't know how to do the whole office thing, right? So we have an opportunity to show them how to do it right. And then the last thing is be intentional about what you do. Own what you do. I was reading in a book recently that has absolutely nothing to do with business, but the woman was wearing a fur coat. It's probably faux fur coat in the middle of the summer, and she was rocking it. And somebody said to her, why are you doing that? She said, well, because I have to look good, and this is how I look good. And they said, well, aren't you hot? She said, I don't care about that. My intention is to look good, and that's what matters. So she was putting out into the world what she wanted, and she was getting it back. So that is what I encourage you to do. As a next step, this is a very, very easy spreadsheet because I knew that we would be showing it on the slide and not doing anything with it. Just take some steps. Just sit down and think about the actions that you can take, the resources you can use, the people you can talk to. Just write it down. It's going to help you get where you want to go. And that is actually all I have to say. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Ginger.
Well, Kaelyn, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And just as a reminder, if anybody would like to ask live questions, if you raise your hand, I can unmute you so you can ask some live questions. But yes, let's go through some of the questions that came in on our chat. Our first question from Antoinette says, what if you don't think your manager is a champion for you? I think mine feels somewhat insecure about what I know and what I'm capable of versus what she does.
That's a fantastic question. So the first piece of building those conversations with your manager, and I didn't put it on here and I probably should have, Antoinette, is you need to have a trusting relationship with your manager. Your manager has to trust you and vice versa. And so what I might suggest is maybe what you want to do is build up that trusting relationship to get where you want to go. By the way, this contact me thing apparently doesn't work, so don't take that screenshot because it's not going to get you anywhere. But the first thing is to build trust. The second is this is where your network is going to come in, right? Hopefully you're going to get to a point with your manager where you have a better relationship and your manager can do what you need to do. Until that happens, talk to the people around you, talk to your peers, talk to a former manager at another organization. Just talk to people, because the more that you build those strong network connections, the better it's going to be for you, no matter what your next step is. And the more that you can show your manager that these are the skills that you have and that you want to have, the more that your manager is going to take advantage of those is not the right word, but is going to be there to help you with that.
That's wonderful. Well, I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll ask you for some final thoughts before we go on to our next presentation. And Anna says, any advice on recovering when you have the courage to have the hard conversation and things maybe don't go your way?
Yes. The first thing I would say is, you know, there's that expression about opinions and that everyone has one. Well, that's just it. If you have the conversation and it doesn't go your way, that is your boss's opinion, and it's just one opinion. And so what you can do is walk away from that conversation. If you don't have a mentor, that's the time to get one. And the same is true for you, Antoinette. A mentor, your network, those are people who are going to give you different opinions. So you're definitely going to want to talk to your mentor or get that person to kind of guide you through this. But I also think it's really important to take a deep breath. Don't do it right away, but take a deep breath right away. You should breathe always. But after you've had some time to think it through, I actually say go back to your boss. Go back to your boss and say, hey, you know what? I've had some time to think it through. Here's what I heard you say. Here's what I think I could do about that, right? Hopefully your manager is going to be the type of manager who says, I don't think you're ready for that, but here's how I can help you. If they don't, or if you are a rock star on the team and they don't want to help you because they don't want you to leave, going to them with what you think your plan is going to open up that conversation once again. And even if they keep saying no, if you're surrounding yourself with people, don't surround yourself with yes people, but surround yourself with honest people who will give you the feedback you need to get to the next level. You can keep going back to your boss with the knowledge that you are in the right. You are doing what you need to do to get ahead. And you'll have enough other points of contact within the organization that you don't have to worry that your boss is going to be like, well, this person is annoying, let's get rid of her. No, they're not going to do that because you're out there showing what value you have, even if your manager doesn't see it. So that would be my advice on that. Just make sure you have a mentor, make sure you have people around you who are useful for helping you get where you need to go by telling you the truth. And your manager just becomes one player on the team as opposed to the entire coaching team.
Well, thank you so much for your wonderful comments. So as we close, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for all our viewers?
Yeah, you know, so with what I've been doing recently, I've been interviewing a lot of people about how they got where they are in their career. And the number one thing that I've heard over and over and over again is simply that they spoke up. And so as hard as that can be sometimes, speaking up for yourself, advocating for yourself is what you need to do in order to get ahead. Because as fabulous as each of us is, we're not actually the center of anyone else's world, except for me. I have 2 dogs, I'm the center of their world. Aside from dogs, we are nobody's center of the world. And so if we want something, we have to be willing to say what we want and ask for what we need to get there. So with that, thank you and have a great day.